Yesterday morning in San Francisco at 10 o'clock, a woman named Jessica went to a woodworking class to build a dining room table. After that, she attended an Aikido class before presenting to one of their top clients at Twitter. Twitter believes in work-life integration, which allows Jessica to decide where and when and how she works. At the same time, here on Malta, little Julian was playing with his Playmobil pirate toys made by his father here on the island. And his father is really proud to work at Playmobil because the toys that Julian plays with are rid of toxins as much as possible. And Playmobil actually really looks after the environment here on Malta. So I've heard that Playmobil actually donates a lot of water and plants and foliage to many brack areas here on Malta. So these are two examples of conscious capitalism. And today, Anne and I are going to share a little bit more wider than we did yesterday. Great introduction from Francis, and Dominic built on that beautifully yesterday. We did a super workshop and very consciously looked at values for the industry and particularly for the association to work with in the future. We're going to build on that. We're also going to dive deep. Anne's going to take you even deeper. We're going to break our speech into parts, so we'll be flip-flopping. Thank you for letting me start, Anne. Okay, this is a topic that's really relevant for today's society. Probably all of us wake up every day seeing news stories about things that are changing in technology, disruptive technology, about changes to our political environment. There's a big, big shift in how our economies are being run. And the term conscious capitalism actually grew out of an approach beginning to really take stride maybe 10 years ago, although it has been around since the 20s, the early 20s. But in the last 10 years, we've seen a big shift in where businesses are what they're focusing on. Here is a sampling of books that have only just come out in the last 2 years. And we decided to focus on the book Conscious Capitalism, particularly because Dominic was so excited about going to Whole Foods. And Whole Foods, Mr. John Mackay is actually the founder of Whole Foods. So have you guys heard of Whole Foods here? So let's see a show of hands. Okay, most of you have heard of Whole Foods. So just to give you an idea of who Whole Foods is, for those that don't know about them, as Dominic found out, they are the leading retailer in the world for natural and organic grocery products with over 90,000 employees, and they had revenues in 2013 of under 13 billion. Yeah, so that's the reason why John Mackay is really like the figurehead of this industry. However, you might have come across different ways to describe this. The words ethical, the words purposeful, the word macro, firms of endearment, flourishing. These are all ways now to describe this approach to business. And what I'm going to do is talk you through the 4 principles that underlie, in particular, the book on conscious capitalism. Higher purpose, conscious culture, stakeholder integration, and conscious leadership. So why these 4, and why these particular ones that are so important? Well, we know now, in lots of research emerging, that if we focus on aligning and maximizing these 4 within a company, then you help the company shift from being purely driven by profits and measured much more by other things like fulfilling life, by engaged employees, by doing the right thing and doing the good thing. Let me put this actually in perspective. Do you know how many people are actually on this planet right now? Does anybody know? Okay, I didn't know either, so I had to look it up. Because the statistics are that in 5 years from now, there's going to be 9 billion of us living here, and right now we're just over 7 billion. So just in 5 years, we're going to have 2 billion more people on the planet that are going to need more water, more food, more shelter, more education. Our natural resources are being depleted day by day. The richest 85 people in the world have the same wealth as the bottom 3.5 billion. We now own more mobile phones than toothbrushes, and technology and science are connecting and disrupting the world that we live in more profoundly and with more speed than anything we've ever seen. Capitalism has served us well, yet it has come at a great cost. And we are still seeing too many people being left behind and too many people's lives that have been turned upside down. So something really has to shift. Businesses now need to acknowledge that their role is to serve society. Each of us as a business person needs to see the opportunities here. We need to be not responsive, but responsible. Each one of us that drives a business, that runs a business, and works in a business. We're in this era of really taking courageous commitment to change for the better, to change for good. We have to change our operating systems. We have to change our new mental models. Business as usual isn't going to do it anymore. So what is going to do it? What is going to serve us as a society? What's going to serve us as individuals? If you look around you, and we heard a lot of these stories in the last couple of days, we have a better sense of what justice and what fairness is. We also know what it means to live a more meaningful life now. If you think of what's going on in US politics, how many Americans are here in the room? Okay, that's an American table, okay, so you guys will know what's going on. I don't know, do you guys know in the rest of the world what's going on with Donald Trump and with Bernie Sanders? Yeah, the divisions and the movements that are being created. Let's move from America to Brazil. The corruption that's going on in Brazil and the big movement that's happening there. Right now in France, they're having silent protests every day that are getting bigger and bigger. This stuff isn't new. We've seen the Arab Spring, yeah? We've also had Panama Papers just come out, right? Icelandic minister has stepped down. Who's from Iceland here? Anyone from Iceland in the room? There you go, right? You know what I'm talking about. What about the Brits in the room? David Cameron, okay? So this stuff is now really at the forefront. It's happening daily, it's happening actually maybe weekly. What about Syria? What about what's happening with the immigrants and how they are actually dividing countries and cultures and mindsets? Yeah, so maybe 10, 15, 50 years ago, you heard about this, but you still lived in the little communities and you just went about doing business as usual. Now it's much more at the forefront. And one other thing that I want to say is why it has been ongoing is if you think about sports, we saw corruption in the cycling industry, we saw corruption in football, we saw corruption in the Olympics, we're still seeing it. It was NSA and Edward Snowden. We heard about that yesterday. Enron, WorldCon. But now it's daily, it's weekly. The internet is making our lives so much more transparent. So walking the talk is not a slogan, it's not a cliche anymore. You can be found out. Who's heard of Cecil the Lion? You guys on Facebook? You can be found out. You do shit over in Africa, everybody will know, and your business will suffer. So the dentist that actually killed Cecil, whether you believe in guns or not, he was found out, and his business actually had to close for about 3 or 4 months, okay? Volkswagen, another great example, not great actually, a terrible, sad example, where corruption was happening, where lots of people were in on this, but too many people were afraid to speak up. And what's happened now is that VW has actually lost 1/4 of their company value for not doing the right thing. We want to live much, much more healthy, conscious lives now, authentic lives. So we yearn for being in touch with nature, with real people. We have farm-to-table offerings, so you now can be in touch with the farmer that delivers the food to the restaurant. Organic food, much Whole Foods. That's why Whole Foods is such a big craze. Yeah? Natural cosmetics, going to the spa, holistic healthcare offerings. I don't know about you guys, but wherever I travel in the world, I seem to see yoga studios all over the place. Yeah? And when I started coaching in 2002, coaching was still noble. I felt pretty neat being a coach, right? Even though I was still really small in the industry, but now everybody is a coach. And it's great because we want to have more mindful, conscious lives. It really shows that we're heading in that direction. And being mindful, being connected, being related, if we look at the millennials and how Facebook is their medium of communication, we as consumers have so many choices now. It was spoken about in the keynote earlier. Does it make us happier, though? How many of us still go to bed lonely at night? And how many do we know that might be taking antidepressants, that might be taking painkillers a lot? It's not going down. The rate is actually increasing. So, for businesses to flourish, we have to align with society's need to want to lead better, more conscious lives. We want to live and work where we are doing the right thing. And my company, Ceeyana, when we go and work with clients, we measure profit. Profit's actually not why you do something. Profit is the result of why you do something. So we measure profit, but we also measure fulfilling lives. We measure, are your processes really bringing out the best in every stakeholder? And are you getting up and doing the best that you can? Is your business allowing you to do that? For the world, for the people, and for individuals, to do the right thing and to do the good thing. So let's look at these 4 principles. So higher purpose, it's the first one because you start with why. You start with why you get up in the morning. You start with, what does this mean? What is my cause? What is important for me? Your work is based on wanting to make a difference, on wanting to make something better, on improving lives and the world. And purpose is so much more about love, not power, not ego, not money. And the vast majority of us, money isn't the reason that we actually do what we do. What is your story? What do you actually believe? Why do you get up in the morning? Simon Sinek, I mentioned this yesterday, I would recommend if you haven't seen the video, who's actually seen Simon Sinek Start With Why? The Americans. So, honestly guys, if you want to watch an amazing TED video, this is the 2nd or 3rd most watched video on TED. 5 million times it's been downloaded, I think. People don't buy what you do. People buy why you do it, and what you do simply proves what you believe. That's a big statement. And Simon Sinek is somebody who's worked in the military. He's worked with the Navy. He's worked with the Army. And the Navy actually has one of their top programs for all of their people is based on starting with why. Why do you serve the planet? Why do you serve the people? Why do you serve the country? And why are you doing this as an individual? One of our biggest clients is actually the largest hotel chain. Just becoming the largest hotel chain, which is really exciting. For those of you that know who I work with them, imagine what excitement it was when we were asked to work with all the global interior designers and architects of this company. Well, exciting, but when we actually managed to work with them, we found out how difficult and heavy and disruptive this group, this team, this unit was. So what we actually did was to find out why they get up in the morning. What is their common purpose as a team, as a unit for this organization? What would it look like if they knew what the music was that they all play together? What is the tune? What are the lyrics? And this took a long time because a lot of them were bruised, their egos were deflated, they were feeling lonely, they weren't feeling heard. But after we started with why, and we had this common purpose, a bit like yesterday, we then could put a strategy in place. We then could work out the best processes. We then could find out what are the best stakeholders that they should be focusing on. And before we know it, within a half a year, they were actually singing their song from the rooftops of their offices, which is really neat. So that's start with why, start with purpose. The second one is culture. For the culture aspect, I'd really like you to think about what is the culture that you tolerate in your businesses, in your organizations, in your company. Is your culture about greed? Is your culture about measuring quarterly profits? Is it about quick wins? Because if that's what it is, then that's what you're going to get. That's the culture that people are going to focus on. Or is your culture about looking after the planet, looking after the people? If I walked into your office, what kind of mood would I sense? What is the smell? What are the noises, the voices, the sounds that I hear? We're often so focused on getting the job done that we actually sacrifice culture. If you have a bully working in your department and you believe he gets the job done, if you have people that undermine who you are and what you believe in for the sake of saving time and resources, you are tolerating and you will pay the price eventually. Culture is the life force of a company. How aware are you actually of your company culture? How aware are you of your stakeholders' company culture? And how does that impact your performance and what you do every day? Anne's going to take you through what makes great cultures. Let me share with you the story of Zappos. Zappos is one of the largest online shoe and clothing platforms. And they actually hire according to a cultural fit. Culture is their number one priority, not money, not profit, culture. So when you have started as a new hire at Zappos, they pay you $2,000 after 6 weeks to leave the company if it doesn't fit. In order to get a pay rise, you have to fit a certain assessment criteria that is based on Zappos's culture and their values that shape their culture. And just two that are really neat is to be humble. It's like their third value. And their last value is to create fun and a little weirdness, a little bit like EuRA. We had the party, right? So these are instilled in every team member, and you can really feel this at Zappos. Zappos is another one of the stories that is used a lot when we talk about conscious capitalism. I'm going to share a different perspective with you. We worked for about 3 years with a very large company that I'm not going to name because it's controversial, the work that they do, the widgets they produce, if you like. I actually loved working with them. We had lots of fun. They were really engaged. They actually had a purpose. What happened, though, is after a while, we realized that their purpose didn't match our values at all. They were doing something we didn't believe in, to the planet, to society. So we spent, in our board meetings, time thinking about, should we continue working with them? It was a big decision because they were our largest client. We actually decided not to. And if you've heard of the law of physics, which is that nature abhors a vacuum, who's heard that? So when there's a gap, it always gets filled. Nature will fill a gap. So when you have a loss in income or you lose a client, if you focus on the right thing and the good thing, it will come because nature fills it. So we actually had about 3 or 4 months where we had a large loss of income, and we focused on the companies we wanted to do business with. And funny enough, as I stand here now, we have a great portfolio of clients we love working with. We have fun with them, we're actually doing the right thing. But it took a lot of courage to make that decision. So, to do the right thing, to be a conscious company, we need courageous commitment to change. We have to change our mindsets, build conscious, purposeful cultures, cultures that serve all of our stakeholders. So Anne's going to take you through what these cultures look like.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm delighted to be here to talk about what I have always referred to in the industry as working from the heart. And I'm glad to have now a more technical term to talk about that aspect of the companies that I love to work with. It was clear to me yesterday at the session that Elisa ran between the RMCs and DSPs, how much many of you, and maybe all of you, have been thinking about this and are already thinking about your higher purpose and your culture. And it was heartwarming for me to see. I'll be giving a couple, in my remarks this morning, I'll be doing 2 things. One is to give you some examples from the relocation industry, including shining the spotlight on a few of you here in the room this morning, to give you some examples of what this might look like in your work, in your industry. Later this afternoon, you'll also hear in the Ignite session, which I urge you not to miss. It will be very lively and fun. You'll be hearing some more examples from the relocation industry that we hope will provoke you to be thinking, what could I be doing even more than I already am? And finally, at the end of this session, I'll be giving you an opportunity through the mighty EuRA app to share with the whole conference some of the conscious initiatives that you are doing, to give you a chance to advertise those. But for now, I want to turn to my second mandate this morning, and that is to give you a bit of quiet contemplation time. Elisa has been talking about these wonderfully important ideas, but I think it's easy for us at a conference to hear them, say, oh yeah, that's a good idea, yes, quite right, I agree with that. But then to go out into the swirl of the dinners and the parties and not really say, well, what does it mean for me? And that's what I'd like to give you time, so I'm going to stop talking for a few minutes, give you time to actually think about what this means for you. In the center of your table are some folded pieces of paper, and I'd like you to each take one. This is actually a collection of 3 handouts. I'll be doing them one at a time. And I'd like you to turn to should be the first one up, that says Conscious Culture at the top. Conscious Cultures. I am adapting this from John Mackey's book. where he came up with a clever acronym, tactile. If you look at the words down the left-hand column, the first letter spells out the word tactile. Very clever. You'll notice I was so delighted yesterday as you came up with the 6 principles that were most important to you. They track Mackie's almost exactly. So it was very, very gratifying, an example of groupthink really coming to some wisdom. So what I'd like you to do, I'm going to describe each of these concepts very, very briefly, and then I'm going to stop talking. And I want you to spend a minute, less than a minute, really, on each one, thinking about your own organization. We even have a column over on the right for you to give yourself a score if you're so inclined. We will not be asking you to share what you write at your table for this one. We might later for some of the others. This one's going to be private, so please be as open as you can be, as transparent as you can be about where you really see your own organization. Ready? Here's the first one, trust. You mentioned it yesterday. Conscious companies that have a lot of trust are energetic and they're wonderful places to work. The ones that are low in trust are defensive, suspicious, cynical. So I'd like you to be thinking both externally between you and the outside world and internally about the level of trust that you experience. Externally, how much trust do you think exists between your company and your customers, your suppliers, your partners, your investors, the broader community, your competitors, your investors? And secondly, internally, think both vertically and horizontally. Vertically, how much trust exists between your program managers and your consultants, between the head of the company and all the other employees? Or horizontally, between peers in similar jobs, or between offices in different locations. How much trust is there? And a bottom line question to ask yourself is, do you trust what you are told in your company? I'm going to start my clock here and just give you a few seconds to jot down thoughts about your company. The next one is accountability. Here we mean the degree to which people in your organization say that they do what they say they'll do. Can you believe their work commitments? Do people take responsibility for doing what they say they'll do? Accountability. Conscious organizations have a high level of accountability. And next, what Mackie called care or caring, in your group yesterday you labeled something called empathy, which frankly I like even better. Empathy connotes this idea that you can take the perspective of someone else, which is the key to good cross-cultural interaction, the ability to look at the world from somebody else's point of view. But no matter how you name it, are there signs of heartfelt care and empathy within your organization? For families who are moving, for your coworkers, for your community of suppliers? Do people, here's where you're going to ask, do people in your organization work from the heart? What routinely happens in your organization if there's a conflict between a non-billable expense and something that the families really need? And bottom line, how well cared for do you feel? Next, Mackie called this one transparency. You labeled it openness. Yesterday, I think it's the same thing. I think you came to that same wisdom. Transparent organizations don't have secrets. To one degree or another, their books, their financial situations, even in some cases their salaries, their future strategies are known among members of the organization, between divisions. Divisions of a company know what the others are doing, how they're paid, how they bill. There's transparency and openness. So do you feel you know what's happening in your organization? And do other people feel they know as well? Integrity. You also named this one. Conscious companies value some global standard of integrity. They do the right thing. Bottom line, they know the right answer and they do the right thing. They tell the truth. How does your company handle RFPs, contracts, compensation of contractors? Have you ever been in a position where you were asked to do something that you didn't feel was right? Loyalty. How loyal do stakeholders feel to your company? Your customers, your employees, your consultants, your suppliers, your investors, your senior managers. And bottom line, how loyal do you feel to this organization? And finally, Mackie called this egalitarianism. We also call it equality. You mentioned something yesterday, equity, which I think includes this and maybe more, has a broader meaning. When John Mackie described this phenomenon, he talked about there being a level playing field among players in the organization. No one, the boss doesn't sit in the front of the plane and the rest of the employees in the back. That there's a level of what interculturalists call low power distance. And equality among members. We actually know that this is something that cultures differ in, and that there can be conscious companies in other kinds of countries where there's maybe a different view about hierarchy. So I would ask the question, do you feel that you have the relationships in your company that maximize everyone working in an optimal way? You have access to the people who need to make the decisions, however that works in your country. So that's a little self-assessment for your own organization about where you stand on these very important ideas that Elisa has been mentioning about being a conscious culture. Let's now take a look at the stakeholders involved in our organizations.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Anne. How many of you have regular management meetings? Most of you. How many of you have board meetings? Okay, a few of you. How many of you have one of these sitting at your board meeting table? At your meeting table. What would happen if you had this gal, Mother Earth, at your board meeting table, sitting in one of your chairs, and she had a voice? What would the questions be that she would ask? How much longer do I have to tolerate this? Are you considering everything and everyone on the planet? How much are you asking of me? We don't have this in our board meeting table, but we have a blow-up doll, and she wears different hats. So she can wear the hat, or he can wear the hat of a very important stakeholder, like a competitor, or the customer. How often do we bring the customer into our meetings when we make crucial commercial decisions? How often do we bring the planet into our meetings when we discuss future strategy? What do we know about stakeholders? Who are stakeholders? How often do you think of the customer? Yeah, probably pretty often. We heard some nice stories yesterday. Partners, investors, communities around you, shareholders. How many of you actually think of your family members as stakeholders? And how many of you think about the planet as a stakeholder? You tug at one stakeholder, and it will affect the rest of your supply chain, the rest of your organism and your system. If you have one stakeholder who has a loud voice, has loads of power over you, and takes all your attention, what impact is that going to have on the stakeholder who's not being heard, who's at the end of the supply chain? And yet, we're all in one organism and in one system. What conscious cultures and conscious companies do, they really focus on the win, 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 win of all of their stakeholders. And looking at a healthy bottom line. What is a healthy bottom line? We have to start thinking about not measuring the things we can measure, but the things that we should measure. And we have to be careful when we measure things because they drive our behavior. So if we decide to only measure money, it's going to drive the behavior, and eventually it will kill innovation and creativity. That's what happened to the hotel chain that we worked with. Conscious businesses measure success not only by numbers and profit, but also by how many stakeholders they can touch, how many stakeholders that they really connect with. I want to show you this slide because it actually proves so much of why conscious companies are so successful. This is a good purpose study brought out by Edelman in 2012, so these numbers have actually increased since then. Edelman is a global PR and marketing company, and if you can't read that, let me just run through what the slide is all about. So in 2012, 76% of global consumers believe it's acceptable for brands to support good causes and make money at the same time. It's a 33% increase from 2008 when they started this study. Across the globe, when quality and price are equal, the most important factor influencing brand choice is purpose. It's actually the most important factor. We know from countries like Japan, China, Netherlands, Germany, that they have a huge focus on purpose. But these are global studies. 72% of consumers would recommend a company that supports a good cause over one that doesn't. 71% of consumers would help a brand promote their products or services if there is a good cause behind them. And they would even switch brands, leave an old company, an old brand, to go to a new one. And finally, we have the research for the book Firms of Endearment, which Dominic mentioned yesterday as well, also written by one of the co-authors of Conscious Capitalism. This is a new edition. He goes as far as saying that conscious companies now outperform successful companies on the stock market by a factor of 10. For every 1 million, they make 10 million. This is a cause. Now we're talking profit. If you guys want numbers, these are numbers. They're doing something right. They're doing something good. How are they doing that, though? What besides these 4 principles do we know? Some of you are going to really like this, because you know what they do? They are not settling for the cheapest suppliers. They are not squeezing what they can out of the prices. They work with selective suppliers to become loyal and mutually respected partners who invest in quality and innovation as well, because they can and they want to, and they're in a win-win together. They don't keep salaries low. Instead, they invest in well-paid, respected staff, providing generous incentives. We heard of these. We heard a lot of these yesterday. Education, health and well-being, flexible working hours. And then they get engaged and committed employees and staff. And guess what happens? When you have engaged, committed, loyal employees, they are going to want to work more. They're going to be higher performers. They're not going to leave the company, which means you have another thing that the companies do. they actually have a fantastic employee. They don't have an employee turnover rate, so their retention is really low. When they pay their employees well, they get their employees to speak up, they give them a voice, a forum where they can actually share what's going on, they acknowledge them, and they get them to do fulfilling work, the retention rate is low, so they don't have to invest in a lot of hiring and training programs. And the most interesting thing is, in today's society, where Facebook and Twitter and Yelp and TripAdvisor, where everything, or a lot of what we do is based on the reviews that we see other people, strangers, share with us, sales and marketing for conscious companies is low. Because they have tribes, they have fans, they have followers who spread the message for them. I actually think that one of the things we don't do enough of is get feedback and work with it, make it visible. If there's one thing that you want to do, absolutely follow through with getting these wonderful testimonials, getting statistics about them, and letting the world know about them. Because your millennials are going to be the ones that are going to go follow your tribe. They're going to follow your organization. Now, the great thing about working in the service industry, of course, is that, and I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here a bit. I said that yesterday. You have a certain DNA about the way you operate. This is a part of you of serving and doing good. And I love coming here because it feels like a big bear hug. Yeah, everybody's loving and kind and fun. So the EuRA already has a lot of these values in it. But I do want you to really think of the double whammy effect that you get when you become a conscious company. You actually have business for good and you're making money. So it's an equation you don't even have to think about. It just absolutely makes sense. And another bit I want to add is I do a lot of work with neuroscientists, particularly on social behavior. And one of our associates who works with us is Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz from UCLA. And we actually are writing a book right now on the topic of mirror neurons. And mirror neurons is one of the greatest discoveries of this century, where they have actually proven that soft factors, like being empathetic, being purposeful, being mindful, being caring, shapes higher performing companies. You get the supply chain that you tolerate. You get the results that you put out there. And basically, mirror neurons mean like attracts like. Good attracts good. Bad attracts bad. So, are you caring for all of your stakeholders? Are you challenging them? Are you stepping up? Are you holding them accountable? Are your purposes and cultures overlapping? And what's even more interesting is that when you actively engage in doing good, on the outside, you feel good on the inside. We kind of know this, but it's actually now proven. So all of this is embedded in conscious companies. And that's actually why I get up in the morning, to really help people see how they can improve their performance and their effectiveness in organizations. And one of the things that we're actually touching in our book is something that came out of my story. And culture is based on values. And values are based on what's important for you, why you get up in the morning, and what shaped the way you show up and the way you drive your activities, based on all of the experience that you've had in your life. And one of my values is actually stakeholder integration. It's connectedness, and it's being, feeling related. Because I have a lot of stories I can share with you, I'm not going to do it now, about abandonment. So one of my values is not feeling a part of something, feeling left out. I'm actually 50% deaf. Most of you don't know I wear a hearing aid. And until 6 years ago, they couldn't help me with my hearing loss. And it wasn't until, thankfully, disruptive technology, was able to come up with technology to support my hearing loss. I wasn't wearing a hearing loss. I felt ashamed of it. I wouldn't tell anybody. And I would just completely feel abandoned and feel left out and become an introvert in many situations. Well, now I'm stepping up. I actually have the courage to tell people I have a hearing loss. What I do in my life now is based on getting people to be heard, because I never felt heard. Getting people to have a voice, because I didn't feel I had a voice. Getting people to feel that they are important, that they belong, because I didn't feel that. That's what drove me. Those are my values. What drives you? Why do you get up in the morning? Why should I care? Why should I do business with you? Because as Simon Sinek says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Why do you do what you do? And please take us to what's important about that.
Thank you. I will. I would like to shine the spotlight on two of our group right now. The first one is Michelle Bramstoff. Michelle, stand up. I see you standing right here. Well, you'll clap when I finish talking about her. Michelle took over Copenhagen Relocations from its founder, Nicole Stockholm. And when she did, she found that the values and mission fit her own very well. I read the mission statement, and I love this phrase, the elements of adventure and laughter along the way. It's part of the mission statement. You can hear the levity and lightness that fills this organization. Perhaps because of mirror neurons, like attracted like, and Michelle fit into that organization. So that's one example, I think, of what we're seeing here. But I want to highlight one other very interesting aspect of what Michelle does in her organization that I think counts as stakeholder integration. And that's her focus on understanding how the interrelated parts of our industry affect each other. Of course, Copenhagen Relocation spends a lot of its attention thinking about how to serve its customers. We are all doing that. But Michelle moved several points upstream, up the supply chain, in a very interesting way. Inspired by the EuRA Global Quality Seal, she said, what we need is something like that for landlords. And so she put together a program that is like a quality seal for landlords. Is there a book on the premises that describes the maintenance idiosyncrasies? Is there a list of workmen and their phone numbers? Is the landlord willing to accept a letter of credit as a deposit? Is the landlord actually the owner, the person on the lease actually the owner, which has a lot of consequences downstream? If the landlords got this quality seal, this kind of approval, they became a preferred vendor. Michelle involved the estate agents, who were another part of the stream. Now, these estate agents and landlords, Michelle didn't have direct control over, but they were working together, and she understood that integration. And that's the sign of stakeholder integration, this understanding of the interdependent relationships and forming creative win-win situations. That is the mark of a conscious leader. Here's another example of someone who understands very well why to keep all segments of in this web of relationships strong. Renee Stegman, I think I saw you. There she is, thank you. Director of Relocation Africa, lives into her company's vision statement. Of course, she offers empathy and understanding to her customers, but also to her consultants. In a very concrete way, she pays them directly after the work is done, even if she doesn't get paid for 45 or 60 days. It makes a cash flow problem sometimes, but the payoff for her is a network of loyal, committed consultants who will go the extra mile for their families. And here's another example. 22 years ago, when Renee started the company, she made the decision not to enter into the referral fee system. No estate agent referral fees, no removal company commissions, no fees of any kind on behalf of their clients. And this has changed the way the estate agents work as well. The tail wagged the dog. And most importantly, it allowed her company to give an unbiased commitment of service in the best interests of the customers. By the way, also having the consequences of a more open relationship with suppliers, a simpler accounting system, and Renee believes has contributed to the longevity of Relocation Africa's in the business. So these are the kinds of things that count in our business. That's how it nails down into your work. So I have another handout. We'll give a few, I'm going to describe it briefly, turn on some music so you can think about your own company just for a few minutes. The next handout, it's called Stakeholder Integration, lists on the left-hand column some broad categories of the kinds of ways that you might already be doing some kind of stakeholder conscious strategy. There's a middle column for you to check off or describe for yourself what you're doing now. Maybe some of the same things I just described. Or a right-hand column for things that you might do in the future. So I'm going to play some music, write and think about this for just a few minutes until I turn the music off. It's just a little teaser for you. I bet you have more to say. We'll give you some chance at the end of the session to talk with each other and share your ideas more broadly. But let's look now at conscious leadership.
Thank you, Anne. So this actually, you could talk for days about leadership. It's actually one of my favorite topics, but I'm actually going to talk to you for 1 or 2 minutes about it, because I only have one message for you about leadership. But before I give you that message, I just want to point out that every one of us is a leader, because I believe the minute you represent your company towards a customer, you become that interface, that leader of that company. And leadership reflects on what you stand for and how you show up as an individual and for a cause, for the company that you are representing. Who are you influencing? What are you influencing? And what is your behavior rather than human doing? Who are you human being? What does it look like to be a conscious leader? What I've come to learn and appreciate from most or a lot of the professionals and the top practitioners in the field of leadership is that leadership is about relationships. That's all it is. Most people, most of us make arrangements. We make arrangements where we write emails, we write texts, we work on compliance and systems and spreadsheets and governance, and that's all good. But if you really want to touch somebody, and if you remember the moments that have really affected you in your life, they have to do with the relationships and the dialogues that you had with people. Relationships are about the rich conversations that we have. And too much time gets wasted and drained on running our businesses when we go overtime, where we have to meet one deadline after another, where there's so much uncertainty and ambiguity, but the real energy drainers are the ones that make or break us when we are not standing in our authenticity and in our integrity, and we're working or not working on relationships that are draining us. Those are the real energies of running, the drainers of running a business. So relationships are about the conversations we have. And conversations start with us, what we believe, how we communicate, and what we as a leader choose to step up for as a cause to a person, whether it's going to work or not. And conscious leaders are courageous leaders. They really step up to change something that they believe in. They tell stories about their values, and they want to excite other people. They believe in amazement. They want to amaze themselves, and they want to amaze those around them, all of their stakeholders. It's not about compliance, it's about being. So you don't do leadership, you are leadership. One of the exercises that I use for this in my practice is asking my clients to ask themselves these questions on a regular basis. Did I do my best to find meaning for stakeholders? Did I find meaning for myself, for my organization? Did I do my best to be amazed? Did I amaze myself? But more so, did I allow others to amaze me? Did I bring out the best in them? Did I build relationships from the heart, not out of fear? And was I a friend at work? Did I do my best to set clear, purposeful goals and make progress? Or did someone else set the goals for me? Did I set my own goals? Did I do my best to be happy, increase my stakeholders and my own happiness? And did I do the right thing? Or did I want to be right? Or did I want to be comfortable and easy? These questions actually come from one of the top coaches in the world, Marshall Goldsmith, and I've actually adapted them to go in alignment with conscious companies. And when you do these on a regular basis, they really start to drive your behavior. So I want to end with saying, or we want to end with saying, and I still will pass on to Anne, that big corporations are trying to keep up with the smaller businesses right now. There's this hunger and this desire to find an authentic purpose someplace. And the response rate for seek out this bespoke boutique provider is a lot higher than go to this big corporation guy. People really want to work with companies that bring out the best in them, that do the right thing for all stakeholders. And the reason I've been working in this business for so long and is so passionate is because I'd like you guys to rethink the business as usual paradigm, the operating system. We've always done it this way. And think about the idea that profit should not be the primary purpose of a company, and you might just be occasionally supporting a profitable cause. Instead, think of the decisions that you're making today that might become tomorrow's problems, and step up and be the cause. Let your business be the cause. Oops, okay. We don't have that slide. There you go.
Two more examples from the room. I'd like to talk first about Patrick Oman. Patrick, are you here? Very good, great. I hadn't met Patrick before, but I was told he was someone I should speak with. Doing due diligence, I checked his website, looking for his bio and his picture, and it's not there. What struck me as we spoke later was how the company is not about him. And I actually asked him about this. It was a conscious decision not to talk about himself. The point of connection, what Patrick is adamant or is passionate about in his work, is that point of connection between his employees and the families that they serve. What he's proud of is that he managed to get through the last recession without worrisome employee turnover. He sees his job as paving the way along the supply chain so that his employees can do their work, so that they can help the families. He hires people whose life experience, this is their credential, their life experience, leads them to be empathic people, makes it natural for them to want to work with families. His current concern is that in the shift from more 3- and 4-day programs to more 1-day programs, not the money, but the employee sense of fulfillment may be damaged or may be suffering. So selecting for empathy, seeing employee turnover as a key performance indicator, worrying about an employee's sense of fulfillment, that's what a conscious leader does. The other example I'd like to share with you is Grable. I think we have some Grable representatives here. Thank you. Grable Movers was found 65 years ago and soon became one of the preeminent movers of furniture and goods around the world. The son of the founder, Bill Grable, used to compare the needs of transferees to those in an emergency room. They needed, yes, professional, competent care, but it had to be delivered with compassion. And I think it's probably in that sense that I got introduced to the Grable family as a psychologist. Because they were committed to thinking about what families' social and emotional needs would be. I remember one conversation with the senior management in Grable where they were asking this question: why should a furniture moving company, be spending money and thinking about family adjustment, family support? And they had the answers to those questions. They knew the answer. It was very, very impressive. As you now know, we've witnessed the remarkable transformation into Grable Relocation, a full-service global management company, divested of the van line business, totally different business. Bill Grable is still the CEO. He still thinks about the demographics of transferees and big data and new models of international assignment, the same way he did as the CEO of a van line, but now it's focused on moving families, not furniture. It's really a remarkable example of using a higher sense of purpose to transform your business. Can I ask Francis and Dom, we're a little over. Can we have 5 more minutes? Okay, I'll truncate this a little bit, but I'd like to give you 2 more experiences. If you turn to the last of the 3 handouts, I think if you asked me what are my higher values, I'm not sure I would know what to say. So I tried to operationalize that a little bit. How does it feel to you? What is your higher purpose? Thank you. And I'd like you to focus on the 3rd question, since we're a little short on time. Say your company was bought by a non-conscious capitalist. What would you be afraid might happen? I'm going to turn the music on just for a minute for you to think about that. Then we'll get to the point where you get to share your strategies with the rest of the conference. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt this. I hope that these other questions will be thought-provoking to you as well. I have one more thing to ask you to do. In a minute, I'm going to, or actually get out now while I'm talking. If you would get out your phone and open up the EuRA app. And we're going to use this app in a new and I hope creative way to help you share with other people the kinds of conscious strategies you are already using, because I probably could have highlighted you as well. Or that you're thinking, so that's one thing. We're going to ask you to share one conscious strategy your organization is currently using, and or one conscious strategy you're inspired to start next week. So if you go to, this is a little graphic to show you how to get to the app. If you've already been using the app, you can skip right to the right-hand part there. You want the activity stream icon in the bottom middle. And if you open that up, you'll see that it's like a Twitter feed. So I'd like you to share with the people in your table, while we play a little bit more music, and then broadcast to the world what you're proud of. If it's something that you're already doing, make it hashtag conscious, and then tell us what you're doing. Write the name of your company and your name. If it's something that you're inspired to do after this conference by talking with others who are doing such important work, then make it hashtag start. Okay, we're going to play a little bit of music while you do that.
Imagine there's no heaven.
Stand up here with me. Go do it.
It's easy if you try.
We're ending with the Beatles as we began the conference.
Above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no country.
Okay.
It isn't hard to
Yep. Maybe after this verse. Let him finish this verse.
and no religion too.
Okay, why don't you-
Imagine all the people living life in peace. You might say I'm a dreamer,
Okay, let's end. Ninny, if you could stop the music, thank you.
but I'm not the only one.
We'd like to leave you with that sound and that song in your hearts.
When we do purposeful work, we treat people with trust and care, respect and restore the ecosystems around us, and recognize that all aspects of our lives and the world are interconnected, then we will go to sleep not feeling as lonely and depleted, but happier and fulfilled, engaged, and seeing our businesses as a force for good, and we will have the opportunity to lead the most meaningful lives ever. So go off and be a force for good. Thank you.